Why should the North Atlantic Treaty Organization care about gender? What are women and women's networks doing to advance democracy? And how should a military alliance think about the strategic utility of programs like Women, Peace, and Security? And what does this all mean for the NATO Summit? There's literally nobody in the world better equipped to answer these questions than Irene Fellin, the NATO Secretary General's Special Representative for Women, Peace, and Security and Human Security. She's been a pathbreaker in all the steps in her career, and NATO is no exception. She's here today to tell us what's on her mind as NATO celebrates its 75th year. I'm Dr. Kathleen McInnis, and this is Smart Women, Smart Power.
This is Smart Women, Smart Power, a podcast that features conversations with some of the world's most powerful women.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Aritas. It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, so as our listeners know, we'd love to get into people's origin stories. What got them into this weird world of international security in the first place? And what was the moment that you kind of knew that this was the space you wanted to be in?
Oh, it's a long story, and I had a dream when I was a teenager. I wanted to be the director of a museum.
Really?
I was passionate in art. My parents transferred this passion to me. So during summertime, we were visiting Florence and Rome and all museums. And I felt that was my place. That was the place where I belonged to. So I studied art in Italy, and I went to the Louvre to study museology. And this is really where I saw myself. And then I started an internship at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Rome in the cultural department for the cultural diplomacy. And this is where I met my husband-to-be. Mm-hmm. And something changed in my life. I decided to live with him, mm-hmm. To go to Turkey. And I was quite young, not too young, but still young when you think that you can do whatever you want. So I was sure mm-hmm. I was going to find a job in Turkey, but I didn't really know the expectations around a spouse or partner at that time of a diplomat.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So life had a different path, apparently, for me, which was being at home, having children, cooking biscuits. And but the problem is that I didn't fit to this place. So I spent some time in difficulties to understand where I belong to. Yeah. And with the support of my husband, we recognized that was not for me. I didn't fit into this role, and I challenged it.
Wow.
And It was a real challenge because it was 20 years ago. A lot of the diplomatic world was still around this vision, stick to this vision that women, spouses, mm-hmm. had to follow. Right. Their partners and husbands. I mean, we got married after 7 years. That was also an issue, not being able to define myself as the spouse. Mm-hmm. And when I was there after 1 year, this difficulty that I was experiencing personally to find my role within the society as a woman within our small community, expat community, mm-hmm. where apparently there was no other plan than being at home and cooking and meeting with other women, led me to look at the role of the women in the society. So,
oh, interesting. Okay.
So this came really from something that it was based on my personal journey.
Yeah.
And I found a master in Ankara mm-hmm. on women's and gender studies. Mm-hmm. And this was the moment where my life changed.
Wow. So it was that personal experience of being in a very segregated, scripted group.
Yeah, it was,
women's, and especially at the time, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so I started this master to better understand the society, the role of women in society and the democracy. But it was to help myself mm-hmm. to navigate mm-hmm. these difficult circumstances because I was really seeing that I didn't know where I belonged to.
Yeah.
So by doing this as part of a process, mm-hmm. a growth process, I ended up to find my career path.
Fascinating. Well, so what was the moment like when you found out that you were going to be appointed to this incredible position in the NATO alliance as the special representative for women, peace, and security?
Yeah, it's a bit another fun story, because I hesitated in applying for this position. My husband is a diplomat, as I said, so which means that for his career he travels abroad. And when I did this master, I built my career as an independent expert, being able to carry the career on with me and being able to be with him. With the time we had children, we have twins, they are turning 10 this year, 2 girls.
Congratulations.
So I didn't want to put myself in the position where we were called to decide to be a part of one career or the other. So I always built this to be independent and being able to do this wherever I was going to be with him and the girls. But then this opportunity was brought to my attention. I decided to apply, and you never know, it's a competitive process. So I was on my desk writing a research for the Bangsamoro on the gender legislative process there, when I got a call from NATO. And I was so deeply concentrating what I was doing that the first time I didn't even answer the phone. Then my colleague called the second time, and we were talking about weather. The beginning in Brussels is raining, in Rome is sunny. And then he paused a moment and he said, the Secretary General took a decision. He would like you to be the next special representative. And I paused and I answered, and he said, I hope you will accept this proposal. And my first answer was, sorry, I have to call my husband. And I always regret, thinking back, I said, why did I say that? The point was that he was boarding on a long flight, and I knew that I could have not informed him for several hours. But I know that from the other side, it could have been perceived as I need to ask for his permission. The next Secretary General Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security. So he said, okay, call him, and then call me back. And then that's
hilarious.
So I called my husband. He was really about to take off, and I said, he chose me and said, what for? I said, he, the Sec Gen. So I got the job. And then he was also surprised, because it took some long week before the decision was made, the internal processes on HR and communicate. And then we had this moment when I said, and what are we going to do now? What about the girls, you and I, the family, schools? It was November, so the middle of the school year. And he answered, maybe I think the best answer that I could get in this moment, which was, would we ask the same if I would me being appointed somewhere? I said, no, we would not, because this is given for granted. So now you take the job and we will figure it out together.
Wow, that's incredible. What a wonderful support. I mean, the support system matters so much. It's not just us that needs to advocate for our positions here. It's a community. That's incredible. So to turn to the decision that we want to sort of get into today, having Women, Peace and Security meetings at the NATO summits. I mean, for listeners who aren't familiar with NATO arcana or bureaucratic jujitsu, putting a meeting on a summit schedule is incredibly challenging, and especially for a topic that it can be hard for people to wrap their brains around. We all sort of understand that women, peace, and security is a good thing, but where does it rack and stack? How does it rate relative to other issues? It becomes, again, the most important commodity of a senior decision maker is their time. So making that case, how did this come about? How did you sort of realize that it was time to create these spaces?
When I started 2.5 years ago, I told myself that something had to change. I don't know if you might be aware that I was advisor of the first special representative in 2013, 12, 14, during the first mandate. So I have this historical memory of what it meant to create this position and this work at NATO when it was only her and myself, the two persons carrying on this responsibility. So when I took my responsibility in January 2022, I found an office of 15 people, which is not huge, but makes a big difference from what I learned, what I experienced the first time. The agenda, I think the WPS agenda, I think hit its potential. So we are a little bit repeating ourselves in how we are implementing, the need, a long way to go still to see the real progress. So I said, for me, the game changer here is how political this agenda is. How can you define this as political is to bring this to the table where the leaders speak.
Yeah.
One way is, the summit is done in a closed door part where the leaders come together and discuss the different topic, take decision, endorse document. And one part is then it's also where you can communicate about it's more public, but which is the public forum. And then there are official side events. So I think I had two biggest achievements since I started my mandate. One was a new strategic concept. I came in January. After 4 weeks, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started. So all our way of working and our priority were reshuffled and changed. But at the same time, we were negotiating the new strategic concept, which is a document that it's prepared and the states with NATO for a decade. So it's the main document that projects us as an alliance in the future to identify the main threats and challenges. The previous document didn't include any reference to women, peace and security at a time when the alliance had already a policy for this agenda. So for me, I set to myself two goals. One was to make sure that there was a reference in the document across the three core tasks. So which means for the audience who is less familiar is about everything that NATO does. We have three core tasks, 3 lines of effort: deterrence and defense, crisis management and operation, and cooperative security. At the beginning, the Women, Peace and Security agenda was focused only on our operations and crisis management. With the time, the understanding that this it needs to be across our work in everything that NATO does was clearer, and this is where we are now. But then we missed that step, bringing this as part of the main document. And the other was to bring the topic visible during the summit. And I had this idea to celebrate women in leadership positions. 2 years ago, NATO had 20 women between Ministers of Defense and Foreign Affairs. It was 1/3 of the total of ministers, the highest number that the alliance ever had. And I decided to, in a very short time, because I came at the end of January, and when the time to start to understand the program of the summit, this was already closed.
Exactly. That's like light speed in bureaucratic terms.
And as you can imagine, when you propose something that is about women, you can have mixed reaction on the other side. But I pushed for that. I knew that this was the right thing to do, and that the alliance needed to do this, to create a space where women's leadership is celebrated, especially in a moment where we really had this high number, which, by the way, has decreased in the past 2 years. Now we have only 12 and we have more allies, so 12 out of 64. So this already speaks a lot about the trend, and so why we still need to speak about this in the agenda. So I had this first event, bringing women together to celebrate this, but to talk about the agenda. So it's really to talk about the summit agenda. So really, this message that is not women do not come together to speak about women's issues, whatever that means. But it was really to talk about security issues and to bring this different perspective on the summit agenda.
And so that it was so successful that it's been replicated across the summits since, right? And
indeed. So last year, and it was easier, I have to say, because the first one a little bit improvised. Maybe it was a big success. And last year, it was easier with the colleague and the planning team to coordinate this. So I didn't have, it was very much welcome. And I decided to, with the host nations, we were in Vilnius last year, to open up the format to civil society. So to bring these two different dimensions, the political part and the civil society, because at the end, 1325 and the Women, Peace and Security agenda are rooted in the movement of civil society and peace builders. So it is very important for me to maintain the dialogue open between the two parts. And it was so successful again that this year, in few days, we will have very important high-level events here in Washington the day before the summit starts as part of the official program.
So as the NATO Summit kicks off, what are you seeing the alliance accomplishing in the Women, Peace and Security space in this 75th year summit celebration?
I think that it's this political and military and growing understanding of the agenda, not as something that we need to have because everybody works on that, because we have to look into the gender dimension, but to understand the agenda in terms of operational effectiveness.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, at the beginning, the focus was on operations. We were in Afghanistan. It was 2007 when we started integrating this dimension in our work. It was a confidential document at that time, so there was no communication about what we were doing.
Right.
And that's also, it was something that was not perceived in a positive way by women peace builders and the crowd working on this agenda. So you can analyze the trend and the evolution of the agenda coming from one specific action that was on the field, which remains important. We learn a lot in Afghanistan, in our other operations. Good lessons learned, bad lessons learned. But this is where you improve and you understand what to change. Into bringing this across the core task and elevating this as a tool to increase the operational effectiveness. But the alliance has changed its posture after the full-scale invasion. So today, we are no longer looking into operations that are out of our area of responsibilities, but we are focusing our interest and our main efforts into deterrence and defense in a possible Article 5 case. Which means that we are to think about what we are doing in a different way collectively for the alliance, so with the new regional plans that are implemented, but when it comes to all the different areas, including women, peace and security. So what does this mean for deterrence and defense? What does this mean for resilience? What does this mean for cooperative security as well? Our cooperation with partners. And here I think about Ukraine first of all.
Yes. I want to get into Ukraine in just a second, but I would love to just foot stomp that point you just made, because I think it's so critically important for the community to understand. Women, peace, and security, when we look at the challenge that our authoritarian adversaries present, women, peace, and security, and this set of tools is no longer just a nice-to-have, feel-good effort, which I think, frankly, some in bureaucracies have perceived it as such over the years. We have to do this in order to build strategic advantage for ourselves. And it is no longer sufficient to not robustly engage and utilize these resources and think this stuff through. The challenge that Russia poses to NATO territories and Europe is too great for us to not look for every kind of strategic advantage we can get. And so, to me, the ability to use these tools to think about these problems differently across the core tasks, women, peace, and security can give us incredible strategic advantage if we think about this tools kit in a slightly different way. And so I applaud your efforts to help the alliance do exactly that. I think it's an incredibly important strategic point that I think people will look back in the future, look back at this moment and see this work being done and say these kinds of things made the difference.
Indeed, I think that we are getting there, understanding as an alliance, both on the political and the military side, that it's not we do this for women because we won't be nice,
right?
Which is sometimes something I heard several times, but it's about the effectiveness and how we present ourselves vis-a-vis our adversary. This is a war against democracy and against our values, and the alliance is an alliance of values. And this is stated very clear in the strategic concept that we will advance gender equality as a reflection of the common values of the alliance. And that was also one part that I advocated for. So it's not only what we do, but why we are, who we are as an alliance. And the gender equality dimension that is then translated into the women, peace and security is key to achieve this. We cannot be a democracy, an alliance of democracies, if this part is not included. And Russia is using the gender discrimination and gender narrative and gender disinformation and misinformation to fight this war.
Absolutely.
And we need to be equipped on the other side to fight this back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're doing this stuff. We need to be prepared in this space. Absolutely.
And this is why it's important that all these elements are addressed across the work of the alliance. And this is what you will see in the new policy of women, peace and security that we have just developed. And it will be endorsed during the summit here in Washington in only 2 weeks. And then it will be made public. And that's also the difference, as I said, since the beginning of this work. Now, all the work that we do on women, peace and security is releasable to the public, both the policy and the action plan. It is important for us also to be accountable and a commitment that we take at political level and to follow up with concrete actions.
So if returning back to Ukraine and the work that you've been doing in the cooperative security sphere, I'd love your views or just to talk to us about what you've been doing with Ukrainian armed forces.
The cooperation with Ukraine, given the circumstances, has not been easy at the beginning. Understanding to avoid any perception of escalation, so traveling was not possible for us. So it took some time to identify a way of cooperating, and I have the possibility to travel twice now, and I kept the open dialogue at different levels, from civil society to parliamentarian to ministers and the women in the armed forces all along these 2.5 years. Now I'm very proud to say that we are developing concrete projects, and in particularly with the women, the service women. So during my visit back in March in Kiev this year, I had the pleasure to meet with the representative from an NGO called Armed Women Now. Irene Fellin is a parliamentarian who decided to take an initiative to develop uniform tailor-made for women's body.
Wait, so you're saying that women's bodies are different to men's?
Oh, yes. Some people have not realized this yet. So that's a problem that does not only apply to Ukraine, but this is a problem across the alliance. So I don't want to say that allies do not have uniform for women, but in certain part of the uniform or the bodyproof,
body armor.
The body armor are tailored on men's body, so they don't fit to the different form, but are also very heavy, and the weight has an impact on the spinal cord. If a servicewoman is not safe and cannot move freely, she cannot fight in the same way as a man do. And this can have an impact on her own life, but also on the life of our or the others. So they developed this project because women there, they were sewing their own combat uniform, and that was no longer possible. So this project was developed, and they produced this collecting funding, and then they offer for free the uniform to the service women. That's very important because it's part of an analysis of the armed forces that we did throughout a gender lens last year to understand this unprecedented increase in the presence of women in the armed forces on Ukraine in such a short time. The armed forces were not ready for that.
Right.
But that's what war is. And this is why we, as an alliance, we train to be ready in case of war.
Yeah.
And that's really an example that we need to anticipate the issues. You need to analyze the problem and develop responses on time. Because once you are in war, there is no time to address certain issues. And when it comes to the gender part of this is certainly the last that is taken into consideration. We know this in different fields, and including in the fear of security. So they are developing this, and I invited them to present the uniform at the NATO HQ a couple of weeks ago, because I wanted allies to see this, why this is important. And I'm promoting an effort to fund the production of the uniform as part of the comprehensive assistance package that NATO has. So this is the mechanism that allies have put in place to support non-lethal aid to Ukraine.
Yeah.
During the past month, we have worked to make sure that women, peace and security, human security are part of what we call the human cluster. So now it's part of the official mechanism. And based on the needs identified by the Ukrainian, we will be able then to collect the funds and move forward with different projects. If everything goes well, we will be able to most probably announce that this project will kick off after the summit.
Oh, terrific. Fingers crossed then. So do you think that your gender as a woman has impacted how you approach the role within NATO? And the way you take decisions, the way you've the priorities that you've set. And if so, why? But if not, why not?
I think so. I think that we are individuals and we cannot speak only about the gender side, because even among women there are differences, but the experience that we have influence our way of doing our business. It influences the fact that if you have children, if you have a family, and you have to take care of this has decision, I think, at the prominent holistic way. And I try to consider this in the decision I take. And I think that makes a difference when I talk to my male colleagues. We process information and decision in a different way.
And to conclude our conversation with Smart Women, Smart Power, I'd love your thoughts on what power means to you.
I think I felt that I had power when the first time I entered into a room and I was seen.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
You know, it never happened to me, but many women say, even women in power say that they enter into a room and they were asked to prepare a coffee or where the boss was. This didn't happen to me. I think because I have a role on women, peace and security and gender, so I'm recognized for my knowledge. But entering in a room where are mainly only men and being seen, I know now that they notice if I'm there and I bring a contribution. And so I felt the power there when my competencies were acknowledged, my role. And I think that's the way my expertise, and this is where I found that I got the power.
That's so interesting. It's the acknowledgement. It's the strength that you bring and the capabilities that you bring to the table.
Indeed.
Well, Irina, thank you so much for joining us for a terrific conversation today. Really grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me.